Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Probably Private. And today we're going to be talking about strategy. Particularly, we're going to be talking about developing a security strategy that makes sense if you're actively using AI at your organization or actively deploying any types of large scale machine learning or AI systems at your work. A lot of security teams are a little bit overwhelmed right now and tasked with working outside of their comfort zone. So I thought maybe it'd be useful for somebody that's been working in machine learning security and privacy for a long time to kind of try to give some useful advice. Although you tell me if how useful this is in developing your strategy. So the first and foremost thing that I would do if it was my job to do such things is I try to understand the usage. And I wouldn't go in as a security or privacy professional. I would first go in thinking like a product person. So thinking like a PM or a PO mindset and say, what is it that these folks are trying to achieve in deploying this, right, for our customers to use or our clients? But if it's personal use, what is it that they're trying to achieve? And the more that you can understand that, as you probably already know, I don't have to tell you this, but the better we can actually think through what are reasonable defenses. And if you don't have a good idea and nobody will tell you, that's going to tell you another thing about what's the culture and the climate at the organization right now around psychological safety of talking through security and privacy concerns. Because if we don't have a ground basis of trust that we can report incidents, so I'm talking as a machine learning person now, if I can't go to the security team and report an incident without getting, like, let's say, personally in trouble for it, or if I'm afraid that I'm going to get personally in trouble for it, we have a bigger problem. And we should probably start there first before we try to develop strategies. The first strategy, psychological safety. If you have no incidents, it doesn't actually mean you have no incidents. It means nobody is telling you when things that either are incidents or could be incidents occur. And the first and foremost thing is you need to build up that trust that people can come to you and tell you, ask you silly questions or tell you when something goes wrong. Okay, so now you've understood the usage. That's the first task. The next task is you're going to develop vendor reviews. You probably already have this, but are they updated for what you're actually concerned about from an AI or machine learning or data security point of view? Probably not completely. Maybe if so, you're ahead of the crowd. But if not, then start thinking through, and I would advise working if you have a risk or audit team alongside those folks, if you have a privacy team alongside those folks, and really redress the vendor review process so that it makes you feel a little bit safer. And here's just some suggestions to add. Can the vendor tell us what guardrails they're using for their system? This should be easy to answer for anybody that's taking security seriously. Can the vendor tell us more about what security testing they do on their side for the models that they release? And, for privacy teams, can the vendor tell us, was potentially compromised training data used? So was training data used that falls outside of our normal use principles or something like this, right? What privacy testing was performed for problems like memorization. And if you want a primer on problems like memorization, you can check out my series on that. So these are all things that you can put into the vendor review. Now, it doesn't have to be a blocker if they say no, but it should bring you pause and start to think about what vendors do we use and what maturity are they in thinking through the security problems of machine learning and AI systems. Okay, so now you've updated your vendor reviews. Next up is to actually start building in security testing and evaluations, not only of the vendors and tooling that you use that makes sense based on the use cases that you know about, but certainly if you're deploying any public facing or any organization wide facing AI usage, you should have support and resources from a security engineering standpoint to actually test. And that means getting updated on the latest attacks. That means potentially running hack days or hackathons where you give the entire organization a day to try out red teaming for themselves, which might also build up more of that psychological safety and intuition. Hey, I think we might be using this tool in an unsafe way, or can I get advice on how to do this, right? So building security literacy and championship across the organization. And, this testing can be automated. So every time that you have a new vendor you want to evaluate, you use your vendor evaluation from a kind of written documentation point of view, but you also run your own testing, right? And then you can start to record that and say, actually, the last vendor that we had a little bit better security around these things. Either you go to the vendor and you say, hey, like we expect from you more of XYZ types of testing and interventions. Or you say, hey, you're out because you didn't pass our security tests, right? And the more you develop this skill and the more you develop the, kind of automation around your testing, the more advanced you can also deploy AI in your organization, because you not only have better competence and literacy around the topic, but you also have way better tooling around the topic and platforms or whatever it is that you choose to use. Okay, you've now understood the use case so that you actually know what you want to test. You've added vendor reviews. You've added security testing and evaluations. And then as you build up those things, you can start to say, here is the bar you need to pass. So this can be organization-wise. This can be use case by use case, where you say, okay, if we're using an AI coding assistant, it must pass 60% of our security assessments that continue to be evaluated. Or you can say, if it scores less than 30%, what we need you to do is to add these process or human level or some other type of protections, mitigations, controls. And this is because, let's say, for example, that you're using data internally, right? And you want to give people broader access to that information for them to do their job. Let's say an internal knowledge-based type of system, which many, many places are looking into right now. What you might want to say is, hey, we need to first actually go through and sort our documentation of what is internal known and what is internal not known. And that is a precaution that we take before we deploy this system. And we will then say that's the minimum security requirement for deploying this system. And this means that you're working alongside stakeholders in the engineering department, in the data department, and hopefully also in the privacy department to develop some basic guidelines and minimum requirements for deploying AI for a particular use case in the organization. And as you build up that muscle, you're going to be able to not only A, know what you're going to recommend, but B, start to develop wider, more strategic guidelines. Like, you don't need to come to us to check first on this. You can already read through the use cases we've deployed that are similar enough, right? So also documenting what's your minimum use case. Here's some ideas for minimum use case. You could say this needs guardrails. Show me that you installed the guardrails. You can say this needs pseudonymization before it can be sent to the AI system. Please show me that you did sanitization and pseudonymization of prompt inputs. You could say this needs to be running on a local model. We want to see it in a local model deployed first before we send it to a third party or cloud-based model vendor. So these are all examples of minimum security requirements that you say, let's do it this way. And then as we build up trust on both sides, we can explore other options. And then finally, hope it's clear, is building up a community of practice. So how do you invite people in to thinking about security in AI and machine learning use cases? How do you get them involved and engaged? Because again, doing this and learning together across the organization is not only going to help improve your data and AI maturity, which it certainly will, but also is going to show you things that you wouldn't know had you not built out this community. So I would recommend either a birds of a feather or a community of practice where you not only can freely share ideas and things you're experimenting with, but also you can maybe get together once a quarter, maybe even in person, depending on how your org works, and really learn, present, have that exchange. Because as this strategy will continue to evolve, it will certainly evolve much better if you're not coming down as the enforcer, but instead you're building up, kind of bottoms up knowledge sharing and very federated approach to security that's going to upskill you all because you're going to hear new stuff that you wouldn't have had time to look into yourself. And it's also going to upskill across the entire organization for much better security and hopefully also bonus of a little bit of privacy in the AI use at your org. So those are my tips. Let me know in the comments, what tips would you give that I missed? If you're actively working in AI security strategy, I'd love to hear from you whether this was useful and like what stage you are in your journey for AI security across the organization. And stay tuned for more on defenses coming soon.